This is The Growth Journey. Real life, real growth, divinely inspired, where military discipline meets a ministry heart. With 40 years of life-shaping experience, including 22 years on active duty, and a deep calling to ministry, David Averitt, CEO and founder of CA Jail Outreach nationwide, shares spirit-led wisdom and practical tools to transform your life. He's also the author of an ebook on growth, bringing even more insight to help you flourish in faith, marriage, leadership, character, church, and business. Ready for divinely inspired results? Let's get started.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive today into some really thought-provoking source material.
Yeah, it's all about this principle of no strings attached charity.
Particularly, within a biblical context.
That's right. And our source material comes mainly from David Averitt. He's got a specific take on biblical charity and what he sees as the real core of community care.
So our mission here is to really get into David Averitt's perspective, on selfless giving.
And also to look at the challenges he highlights in how charity is sometimes practiced today.
Right. And he uses some pretty powerful personal stories to make his points. We definitely want to unpack those.
There's this core tension he brings up too, isn't there?
Yeah, the contrast he draws between government social programs and what he argues is the intended role, maybe the historical role of biblical community care.
It's a big topic, so maybe we should start with David Averitt himself. Introduce him and his basic philosophy.
Good idea. So David Averitt, he's the CEO and founder of an organization called CA Jail Outreach.
And CA Jail Outreach, its mission is, well, it sounds pretty straightforward, but it's really impactful.
Yeah, providing essential help. Things like food, help with rent, gas money, that kind of thing, for people who are really struggling.
Exactly. But David Averitt stresses it's not just about the stuff they give away. No, it's fundamentally about fostering a culture of truly unconditional giving. He talks about living this out even with his own family.
Right, I saw that. He puts a real emphasis on teaching his kids about generosity, selfless generosity, showing kindness without expecting something back.
It's about practical, hands-on help, providing a meal, helping with a bill, focusing on the actual need right there in front of you.
And this gets us to his main principle, the one he feels is absolutely foundational.
Giving with no strings attached.
Exactly. David Averitt thinks this is a core biblical idea that maybe has kind of faded a bit in some modern approaches to charity.
He's got a quote that really sums it up, doesn't he?
He does. True charity isn't about counting converts. It's about connecting with Christ's heart.
That really cuts to the motivation behind his view of giving, what success looks like in charity for him.
Yeah. And he doesn't just, state this principle out of nowhere. He grounds it very firmly in Scripture. That's key to getting his viewpoint.
Right. He points to some pretty well-known passages.
First, he brings up Jesus' words in Matthew 25, verses 35 and 36, where Jesus lists things like feeding the hungry, giving drink to the thirsty,
welcoming the stranger, clothing the naked, visiting the sick and imprisoned. Yeah.
And what David Averitt finds really significant there is what's not said.
The lack of conditions.
Exactly. Jesus presents it as a direct, unconditional response to a basic human need. He doesn't say feed the hungry if they promise to or anything like that.
The need itself as the qualifier seems to be the point Averitt takes from it.
Right. Then Mr. Averitt brings in the Apostle James, specifically James chapter 2, verses 15 and 16.
Ah, yes, where James gives that sharp contrast, seeing someone without clothes or food.
And just saying, go in peace, be warm and full, but not actually giving them what they need physically.
And James asks that powerful question, which David Averitt echoes. What doth it profit? What good is that?
So from Averitt's perspective, James is saying that, spiritual words or advice alone just aren't enough if someone has immediate, pressing physical needs.
You have to address the tangible first.
That's how David Averitt reads it. He reinforces this by saying that true faith, as he gets it from these passages, shows itself through actual tangible actions.
And he has another quote that really hits this home.
Which one?
A hungry stomach hears little of salvation. A filled stomach opens the door to hope.
That really underscores the practical side of it, doesn't it? Addressing physical needs first as like a foundation. That's David's view.
So we've got his core idea, the scriptural basis he uses.
Okay, this is where it gets really vivid. because he shares a personal story. It captures this whole no-strings-attached idea in action.
Ah, the Burger King story.
That's the one. It's quite something.
It really is. It's very memorable the way David Averitt tells it. So he was driving home with his family. They'd just eaten at Burger King.
Huh.
And they stop at a traffic light. And there's a man holding a sign asking for food.
He mentions seeing signs like this, pretty often. But this time, something was different.
Yeah, he said it hit him differently. He felt a really strong internal push. He actually describes it as the Holy Spirit truly grabbed my attention.
Wow. Okay, so not just a passing thought.
Not at all. And instead of just driving on, he acted on it. He turned the car around right then and there and drove back to the Burger King.
Just that act alone, turning around?
Yeah.
That shows something.
Definitely. A commitment beyond just noticing. And he didn't just, grab some leftovers.
No, he recounts ordering a specific meal, a large Whopper combo.
And he makes sure to ask them to pack the fries extra full. Added 2 large waters, too. He wanted it to be, a substantial, proper meal.
Took the time to do that, then drove back to the light where the man was.
Handed him the meal. But, the story doesn't stop there. It kind of unfolds.
Right, this is the part that really stuck with me. As he was driving away, he heard the man shout across the street.
To a woman, right, calling her my love.
Yeah, and saying, "I got some food for you." David Averitt looked back.
And saw the woman was pregnant.
Exactly. And that just, amplified everything for David, the need, the impact of just that simple meal.
He said his heart was really moved, so much so that he pulled over right then.
To have a moment of prayer with the couple before finally leaving.
And you see the no strings part so clearly there in that initial act. He gave the food, offered a prayer, and left.
No asking for anything back.
Yeah.
No conditions at all on the gift itself.
The interaction seemed totally complete right there. But then,
fast forward. About 8 months later, David Averitt says he's just at the mall.
Minding his own business. And this woman approaches him.
And the first thing she says is just incredibly simple, but powerful.
Thank you. It was a girl.
Wow. Just like that.
Yeah. Then she handed him an envelope. He thanked her, offered a quick prayer for her, and she left.
He didn't even open the envelope right away.
No, he mentions taking a moment, just processing this unexpected encounter, what her words meant.
And when he finally did open it, later, in his car.
Inside was a cashier's check for a significant sum of money.
He must have been stunned.
He says he was completely floored. And he interprets this whole experience as God returning their act of generosity.
In a totally unexpected way at an unexpected time.
Exactly. For David Averitt, this story isn't just a nice coincidence. He sees it as this powerful confirmation of his whole no-strings-attached philosophy.
That when you give freely, just purely out of compassion, without expecting anything back.
God often works in these surprising ways, opens doors you couldn't have planned for.
It's a really powerful illustration of what he means by seeing God's hand at work through just simple acts of kindness.
It really is. It makes his principle feel very tangible. Now, David Averitt doesn't just share these inspiring stories. He also critiques some modern practices he sees.
Right, and churches and charities. And he brings up this statistic that he finds pretty concerning. He calls it the 3% problem.
Yeah, and he cites a source for this, Christian Credit Union, I believe.
So what's the problem, according to him?
According to the stats he uses, David Averitt points out that, on average, churches and faith-based groups might only allocate about 3% of their total budgets specifically to direct charity.
Meaning, actual aid, food, rent help, utility bills, direct financial help for people.
Exactly, that kind of direct community care. And he contrasts that 3% pretty starkly with other big budget items.
Like what?
Well, he says over 60% often goes to employee costs, maybe 20% to buildings, around 10% to programs, and direct benevolence often gets a percentage similar to or even less than things like postage or printing, sometimes just 2-3%.
Wow. Comparing it to postage, that's meant to make you stop and think.
For sure. He basically asks, when postage rivals compassion, have we lost our way?
From his point of view, the numbers suggest priorities might be misaligned compared to the biblical mandate he talked about earlier.
He also tackles the whole strings-attached help issue head on.
Yeah, he shares stories, anecdotal accounts of people needing basic stuff, food, gas money, rent help.
And being told they first have to attend a service or volunteer for X number of hours or sit down for a mandatory talk about salvation before they get any help.
And he challenges that directly, doesn't he? He asks, when compassion comes with conditions, Is it truly Christ-like?
Yeah. His view, drawing from that idea of agape love and the examples he uses, is that real love, pure love, doesn't demand prerequisites. It just gives because there's a need.
He does touch on the justifications people give for conditions, right? Like protecting God's money or donor accountability.
He acknowledges stewardship is important, of course, but he questions if those kinds of conditions actually line up with biblical ways of caring for the poor.
He might point to verses like Proverbs 19:17, lending to the poor is like lending to the Lord.
Right, which implies a certain trust in God for the outcome, rather than putting all these requirements on the person receiving help.
So for David Averitt, biblical stewardship in this context means focusing on maximizing the impact of the gift, getting the help to the person.
Without putting up extra hurdles for people who are already in a tough spot. It's about focusing on the giving and the intent, maybe, more than judging the recipient's response.
Okay, so he's laid out his foundation, shared that Burger King story, critiqued some current trends. What's his vision then? What does he mean by reclaiming community care?
Well, David Averitt's vision seems really personal. It's rooted in how he grew up.
His parents?
Yeah, he talks very fondly about his parents. They were involved in something called community care ministry, and they set this strong example of selfless giving.
How does he describe their approach?
Pretty simply, assist those in need, provide what they seek, and continue our journey with no strings attached.
Oh, there it is again. No strings attached. And they weren't focused on numbers.
Exactly. He says they were untroubled by numbers. They weren't like tracking how many people came to church after getting help or counting conversions as the main measure of success for their charity work.
That connects right back to his quote about not counting converts, but connecting with Christ's heart. The focus was just on the act of love itself.
Right. And he shares other little examples too, like his wife just paying for a stranger's groceries sometimes, or their family giving away Christmas trees.
Simple things.
Simple things he sees as illustrations of the principle in daily life. Kind of a call to action for others to think about similar acts of just pure generosity.
He also brings in some history about government social programs, doesn't he?
He does. He notes that things like the big social programs that came about in the U.S., especially after the Great Depression, they were initially meant, at least partly, to relieve the huge burden on churches and private charities, which were just overwhelmed trying to meet all the needs.
And the 501c3 status.
He points out that tax-exempt status was set up with the idea of letting these groups, including churches, operate independently from government funding, maintaining that separation while still enabling good community work.
But David Averitt sees a shift that happened over time.
Yeah, he perceives that many organizations, even faith-based ones, started relying more on government funds, or maybe just assumed that the big taxpayer programs were handling most community needs.
And so they focus their own resources more internally on buildings, staff, programs.
That seems to be his observation. And this leads him to ask this really insightful thought, as he calls it.
Which is?
He wonders if this sort of outsourcing of compassion, this reliance on government structures for basic welfare, if it might have accidentally weakened the church's direct call to care for the community.
And maybe, in his words, dimmed its light as a visible source of unconditional love.
That's the question he poses. He emphasizes that the roots of social welfare are actually deep in the Bible.
Old Testament laws protecting the poor, widows, orphans.
Right. And New Testament calls to care for people not just with words, but with actions and in truth. He references 1 John and James again there.
It connects to that other quote of his, too. Faith without works is like a lamp without oil. It may be beautiful, but it brings no light.
Exactly. Faith has to be active, visible through actual service and compassion in the world. That's his strong belief.
And he says his own organization, CAJL Outreach, is built around this.
Yeah, committing the majority of their funds specifically to this kind of no-strings-attached help.
They do give out other things like Bibles and tracts.
They do, but he presents those as separate resources, not something you have to take or discuss to get, say, help with your rent. The essential aid is unconditional.
Okay. And this commitment, this philosophy, it all leads up to his final call to action for churches and organizations.
Which is pretty direct. Significantly boost your direct charity budgets and, in his words, take back charity work from the government.
He really wants people to witness the hand of God at work rather than the hand of the government.
Yes. He truly believes that these visible, unconditional acts of generosity done by regular people in faith groups are a powerful way for others to actually see and feel God's love in a real, tangible way.
His other quotes really hammer this home. Let our hands be God's hands, visible and active.
In a world longing for hope. And again, that core message, let the people witness the hand of God at work rather than the hand of the government.
He also briefly connects charity back to that deeper meaning, right? Agape love.
Yeah, 1 Corinthians 13 kind of love. That divine, selfless, unconditional love that just gives without expecting return. He stresses that everything we have is ultimately God's anyway.
So we're meant to be channels for that blessing.
Precisely. He uses the quote, "We are blessed to be a blessing. Our hands are extensions of God's heart, tying our actions directly to God's nature and purpose for us."
So if we boil down David Averett's final message, as presented in the source material.
It seems to be. Let's get back to these biblical roots of giving without strings. Let's make community care a primary way God's hand is seen in the world.
Because society, he suggests, really craves seeing these authentic, visible acts of love. And maybe relying too much on government programs diminishes that visible presence of God's blessings flowing through people and communities.
It's a really strong call for faith communities and individuals, too, to step up with a more active, unconditional, and visible kind of charity, all based on their understanding of God's love.
Wow. This has been a really fascinating deep dive into David Averett's perspective on, well, reclaiming biblical charity.
Yeah, we've explored his case for no strings attached, giving grounded in how he reads Scripture.
Looked at the challenges he sees today, that 3% problem, the whole issue of conditional giving.
And we definitely spent some time on that incredibly powerful Burger King story, that personal angle.
Yeah, the meal, the unexpected return 8 months later. It really sticks with you.
And the core idea David Averett keeps presenting is that stark contrast, isn't it, between his vision of God's hand visibly working through unconditional community care
and what he sees as maybe an over-reliance on more impersonal, institutional, or government programs.
Yeah.
His call is clearly to shift back towards the first one.
Definitely.
So building on David Averett's perspective, just as we've heard it in the source material, here's something, maybe a provocative thought for you to consider today.
Okay.
How might intentionally visible and truly unconditional acts of generosity, the kind he describes, done by individuals or local faith groups, how might that shape a community's understanding of faith and compassion differently than, say, aid that comes through larger, maybe less personal, institutional, or governmental channels?
That's a good question to ponder. And if you want to learn more about David Averett's work or his perspective, he mentions a couple of places to look.
Right. There's the CA Jail Outreach website. That's www.cajailoutreach.org.
You can find out more there about their mission helping inmates, their families, and others in need.
And he's also on Facebook. It's www.facebook.com/David.Averett.
So resources are out there if you want to dig deeper. Always more to learn, and definitely a lot to think about based on his insights.
For sure. Always.
Thanks for joining us on The Growth Journey. If you're ready to keep growing in faith, leadership, and life, be sure to follow the show and share it with someone on their own path. For more resources to connect with David Averett, visit cajailoutreach.org. Until next time, keep pursuing real life, real growth, and divinely inspired results.